I'm happy to start our next session, which is on ethics and trust in journal publishing, how sound is the system? And this is a subject that's very near and dear to my heart, and I know to the hearts of my panel here, who I'm really delighted to have here. I think they're going to have some very interesting, possibly somewhat controversial things to say this afternoon, hopefully very thought-provoking things to say. And one thing that we are all agreed on is that we really would like this to be, we'd like your input into this discussion. What I think, I can speak for all of us when I say what we'd like out of this is not just their thoughts on how we can improve the system, but your thoughts on how we can improve the system, and particularly sort of practical, realistic things that we can do as an industry and as an ecosystem, really, to make things better. The theme of the overall meeting is stewardship, which I think is a really, really important topic. And trust, as Jose Marie said this morning, is a really important component of that. And working on the trust issue first, I think, is really critical. We all know that we like to think our system is good, and I think a lot of the times it is good. I'm not sure it's great. And certainly we know that there have been a number of examples of not good practices. The predatory publishers came up earlier. There have been some lapses by reputable publishers as well, some of which have been very professionally and well fixed, some not so much, unfortunately. There's also, I think, some misunderstandings about quality issues in open access. Certainly there was a recent survey by Cyber and the University of Tennessee on trust, and that was one of the things that came up, was that a lot of researchers somehow equated open access with poor quality, which, for the most part really isn't the situation. John's certainly going to speak to some of the time when that wasn't the case, but sort of tarring all open access publishers with the same brush is certainly not the right thing, and I think speaks to some education that's needed out there. There was even, I expect some of you saw in Time magazine this week, an article about peer review. I mean, in Time magazine, for all places, it's really come to something when peer review is being talked about there, and that was, again, just asking some questions about, is peer review still fit for purpose, really? Is it still the right way of doing science? So I think these are really important questions that we all have a vested interest in not just answering, but really taking responsibility for, and that's what I hope we'll be able to address in this panel. So we have 4 panellists. They're sitting in the order, very obediently, in which they're going to be speaking. So John Bohannon from Science, my colleague Chris Graff, from our Oxford office of Wiley, Ivan Oransky of Retraction Watch, and Phil Davis, who's a consultant and writes widely for the Scholarly Kitchen, amongst other things. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming them, and over to John.